Hello, hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. How's everyone doing? Good afternoon, Patrick. Hey, Daniel. Hey, people in the background. What is going on? Interesting day. Market sell off continued. NVDA. Actually, those were very impressive earnings. Very impressive revenue number and impressive forward guidance. So, it's not cheap, and even with the guidance, it's not cheap. But they did solidly beat expectations, and their guidance is strong. We'll see if they can hit that next quarter because they've set a very high bar. So this is why you wait for a shorting pattern to trigger. Overvalued just isn't a shorting pattern. Now we had the FOMC meeting minutes 2 coming out. The biggest takeaway from that was we want to make sure that people don't think there's going to be any rate cuts this year and that there could be more hikes, and they expect a mild recession. So that sums up the FOMC meeting minutes. So you're tripling down. Careful, Chris. Know where your stops are, and yeah, that's called cannonballing. And that blows a lot of people up. The worst thing that can happen is you keep getting away with it until the one time you don't. So be careful. Know what your trade plan is before you ever get in a trade. Because you need to know where you have to cut it. And if you have a plan that you add to scale in, that's different. But when somebody says tripling down, that's not a plan, generally. Because it's going against you. Initial jobless claims tomorrow morning. Expected 245. Last was 242. We also have a continuing jobless claims. Expected to be about 1790 to 1800. Last time was 1799. So we'll see how those come in. Those are 7:30 Central Time. But even more important than that, we have the second estimate of the GDP price index, GDP growth rate, GDP price index, PCE prices. This is not as important as the PCE numbers coming out tomorrow, but it's forecast to come in at 4.2. Previous was 3.7. So we have a lot of stuff coming out 1 hour before the open. We got Fed Collins speaking. 1 hour after the open, we got pending home sales 30 minutes after the open. We have the Kansas Fed Composite Index and Manufacturing Index still expect to be in contraction. And then that pretty much winds it up. So all the key numbers are done by 10. And then remember, we have PCE, the very important PCE and durable goods on Friday. So don't get lulled to sleep just because the FOMC meetings are out and NVIDIA beat. So we should see a snapback unless the numbers tomorrow morning come out very bearishly for the market. We should see at least a snapback rally. There's still negotiations also on the debt ceiling. That can also, if something gets resolved with that, provide a snapback rally, but just off NVIDIA alone, unless something is said on the conference call the market doesn't like, that will definitely prop up the NASDAQ and probably prop up the rest of the market with it. So that's where we sit. Amazon was a mega cap up the most of the mega caps, 153. Meta was up second. Tesla was down. Oil was interesting. Oil bounced a bit. We'll go through that because we also had from the EIA numbers. EIA numbers, there was a huge draw on oil stocks, but oil didn't rally as much as I expected it to. Fed Watch tool, 70-30 for a pause versus a hike. What's more interesting is if we look at the probabilities, we actually have pause, hike, pause, and only one cut now. And if they hike, then it'd be 2 cuts. If they don't hike, it would be only 1 cut. So the market really starting to come in line with what the Fed is saying. Fear and greed still in greed mode. What else do we have? Good evening, Anissa. Do you know where are you wrong, Christo? Good afternoon, Jacob. All right, so we already talked about NVIDIA. I thought Snowflake was a miss. I did not have. I was looking more at NVIDIA this afternoon. We'll have to check on that. Best Buy, Dollar Tree tomorrow, and then Costco after the close. And Autodesk are the big ones tomorrow. So, again, the bounce. Look at the NASDAQ up 54 basis points right now. So, into the rotation zone and back up. I bet you NASDAQ goes to recent highs tomorrow, which now we can do a little reverse harmonics. And the major target for tomorrow would be about 14.1. If it can get there, 14,030 is the minor target, and the very minor target would be today's highs. S&P, I just didn't check on the close or the volume. See, volume still coming in on the sell-offs. A little bounce off that 50, which we talked about this morning, being the key level, and then a bounce. I'm also expecting a secondary reaction here. And this is where I will use the reverse harmonics and look for, if it takes out the high, then about 41.84, close about 41.84, then I'll watch for that high area. So everybody who's been a long time viewer knows that. We'll really gauge what happens, especially how the market reacts if they do get a debt ceiling deal. So NASDAQ back up after being down pretty much all of the day. Dow also talked about this, finally hit that first target and the 200. So that's the first target hit. Again, would not be surprised to see a bounce in the Dow either. In the next rollover play, 35,642, 32,407. Remember, both the doubles and then in the S&P and NASDAQ did complete. Russell holding that 1767 area and closing just above it. See if there's any follow through. Russell's cycles are really rolling over on the daily. So at this point, we get the pausing area at that 200. The VIX, which I assume as long as NASDAQ holds up, should be a drop tomorrow, a pullback. That's where we sit. Hey, options 22. The DAX coming back down, not quite to the 50, but we could see this 15,808. Then I expect also a short. There's some pretty key support right down there, so I'm watching for any bounce around this area. And that would just be a bounce. There is no strong pattern just yet. We'll have to wait for Europe to open. The notes, movement back down after yesterday's little bounce, so that means the yield is climbing back up. This is the highest yield close on the 10-year future, or the 10, well, this is the micro 10-year futures, but it's the highest yield close since back at Friday, March 10th. Also moving up into a clear path move with the key close being 3772. Yeah, it's a NVIDIA strong reaction. We'll get to that again. I already talked about that. So NVIDIA going to 800. I wouldn't say that just yet. That was impressive numbers they posted. But it's still, even with their earnings growth, it's still going to be highly, highly overvalued. But it can keep on chugging. By the way, yield curve based off the futures, you see breaking below key support. Breaking, but that's why we wait for reversal. That's why I started off with. You wait for reversal patterns. We don't have a strong one yet. There hasn't really been one besides the little minor ones. This is interesting because it's really breaking down. So I'm curious to see how far back the 10-2s fills. Dollar index strong today, especially this afternoon, taking the potential double, which never confirmed, off the table. Coming in on that 62.5. Now we might see a little pause tomorrow again with the market reaction, but if we get that close above that 62.5, we'll really be targeting this last high area back from the beginning of March. Key support now coming in at 103.10 to about one, and then about 102.73 is the major support level. Well, you're welcome. Options 22, glad. Thank you very much for the super chat, everybody. A huge shout out to Options 22 for supporting the channel. Uh, glad you had a fantastic day on NVIDIA. Crude. Crude is interesting. See, we had a big draw, but crude stalling out here. It's going to be real interesting. It's closed just below the 200. It's hard to see, but let me pull these lines off. There you go. It's still hard to see. Hold on. Hold on. There you go. If we do break above that, we could see a real quick move to 76.32. I'm just surprised with that reaction, though. So that is the next thing I'm watching for. There's any backfill is into very key support. What else? We have gold. By the way, gold now has a triple bottom. It confirmed but did not trigger. Confirmed and did not trigger. So there is no reader, and you see the triple bottom. So that is off the table. And if gold breaks this 1955 area, we could see a pretty quick trip to potentially 1921. This 50% is going to be minor support right in here, but that breaks, really watch the 62.5 cluster area. Silver, second target is re-hit again and then now broken below it. So 22.82 with silver. And that's also the 50-week EMA. If it continues, remember, it's into a clear path move. The next target I would utilize would be 22.05. Copper, ugly, ugly, ugly. Coming into a key support area right here is 355, 356, 355 area. So I'm watching, you can see here, this is a major breakout area retested. So resistance, breaking, becoming support, forming a double bottom, moving on up, and now test that. So I'm watching for a potentially the short-term bottoming pattern or at least some kind of little bounce in copper to the diamond breakdown pattern. Here's your platinum. Platinum, by the way, triggered a double top today. So, targets 995, 971, 947. Completely triggered right there. Any bounce would be the first cross to rotation zone. So key resistance coming in. Minor resistance at 1050. Major resistance coming in about 1065 to 1070. What else? Yen never triggered the minor double top, and moving on up to the cluster area. Next target is 140, then 140.58. The double is still potentially on the table with the euro, but not triggered. I'm still watching. See, it's holding the rotation zone going down. Next target is 107.34. I want to clarify again, not for the longer term members, you know this. Just because I'm putting up doubles does not mean they ever have to trigger. That doesn't mean we are bullish or bearish. Like, it doesn't mean there's a potential double bottom, I'm bullish the euro. No. Remember, that's why we also have the rotation zone concept. That means it's either for an entry for a counter trend bounce or for a stop if you're trading with the trend. The reason you notice patterns going the opposite direction is because it gives great stop levels or counter trend bounces. But unless it ever triggers, it doesn't matter. Remember, you can have repeated doubles that never trigger. How many doubles do we see on the way up in this market that never triggered? I think, because, there's a potential double, never triggered. Oh, there's a potential double top, never triggered. Then we finally got one that hit the first target and then one that hit all the targets. So just remember that. Pound also breaking below key support, watching for more pullback in the pound. Bitcoin still holding the most recent lows, but this is the lowest close since back on the big rally day of March 23rd. So there's some technical damage happening with Bitcoin. Tesla into the rotation zone, and this area I was watching that we talked about this morning, and a little bounce up. We'll probably get some follow through bounce and possibly a gap fill tomorrow. Beyond that, it could be setting up. If it does continue the rally, I'll be watching for another mini double top forming in there. NVIDIA, where is it? Where is NVIDIA? So 360, so it's all-time highs, at least post-market all-time highs. Let's do our retracement harmonics now. What do we have? We have 376. So this is where it's very handy, especially, I'm not talking just NVIDIA, when you have a stock that's breaking out to new all-time highs and you want to at least try to come up with what target should I utilize. That's how we do it, the reverse harmonics. 376 and 406. Long way off from 800. And this is where you sit there, you know, pull back into the daily rotation zone. Keeping out, look how many times it's held the rotation zone coming on up. And then just, even this move shocks me a bit. But we'll have to see. Now, key support is back at 347. All right. Hey, Mega Chad. Yeah, I don't think the October low will come again for NVIDIA. There's your next price targets for NVIDIA. Do I think NVIDIA will do a stock split? It wouldn't surprise me if they did. So, hey, business person. Explain, because people are still just people are blindly buying stuff. People are blindly buying stuff. So that's where that sits. What do we have again for tomorrow morning? Let's just peek at Best Buy. Best Buy. That is not a strong chart. And it's well below the 62.5. So to the downside, if they miss, I'd be looking at 64.85. Any beat would be, your overhead resistance is pretty substantial now, but any beat would be 74. And where is there? Dollar Tree. Dollar Tree also tomorrow. Oh, that's interesting. Barely a close above the 62.5. That's going to be interesting. Holding recent, just slightly below recent breakout levels. Gold 1 hour double bottom. No, there won't be, because it just invalidated the double. We have a triple on a 1 hour though. Yeah, you have a mini one. You have a mini one. That's your mini one if support holds. But the bigger one is the bigger one is off the table. And that doesn't even take it back to the rotation zone. So if dollar pulls back tomorrow and you get a little bounce, yeah. I think the majority is institutional, very little money. I meant verse is institutional versus little guy money. There's a fair amount of institutional and funds in it, but you have a lot of people still chasing NVIDIA. But the more drivers going to be the institutional in the short term. Intel is still being lazy. Yeah, Intel is coming back. By the way, the double The double only hit the first target area and then back down. But Intel, you know, because they slashed their dividend, Intel's not falling through. Let's see after hours. What did AMD do? Look at that. See, it's still buying the chip frenzy. Buying the chip frenzy. I mean, AMD, I thought their earnings report was not good at all, but it still rallied strong. And now it's up with AMD, I mean, up with NVIDIA. But you got to go with the trend till the trend ends. Let's see where the NASDAQ is, and then I got to wrap it up today. So the NASDAQ, want to double check this. Whew. Let's see where the key levels are. It could theoretically on this one bar close back above the 62.5. So then the target area for tomorrow would be 13,927 to 13,979 as the highest probability, minor probability 13,876. So we'll have to see that and watch that in the next 5 minutes. With that, I need to wrap this one up. I have to deal with some stuff. So I shall talk to everyone later, and we'll see. Don't get caught off guard also. Are you into, am I into, no. I mean, I follow it, but I'm not into all the stuff like, I'm not hog nuts AI. AI is not going away, but I'm not into all the extra hype with it. It's just like all the extra hype that was with blockchain before. Doesn't mean it's going away. It just means some things are overblown. All right. Remember, don't get caught off guard by employment numbers and especially the GDP second estimate numbers 1 hour before the open. So I definitely check in on those, and I'll talk to everyone tomorrow. Bye for now.